Hi. Greetings from the Great Sage. Before we start, please subscribe and hit the notification bell icon and don't miss any contents. This is the light novel of that time I got reincarnated as a slime. If you haven't watched previous video, I will leave the link on the description box or you can click here. Let's start. This is Tensura Light Novel Volume 16. Tensura Light Novel. Volume 16. The End of the Game. Chapter 1. The Betrayal. Zegion vs Dino. Part 1. Dino decided to take things seriously. It was a very annoying situation where he was struggling against an opponent he could easily defeat, but that was over now. You can't afford to look the other way, can you? The words fell out and Beretta's sharp fist slice across his cheek. What an underestimation. I can't believe you're taking us on with your head in the clouds. Apito's Osiris rapier also flew by. The sting was sure to be painful. Dino did his best to avoid it. I thought I was far superior to these guys, but was I just being overconfident? Even with two opponents at the same time, I didn't think I'd be having such a hard time. Dino felt a little unsure of himself, wondering if he had become weaker after slacking off for such a long time. The fact that he had time to think about it was proof that he still had the strength, but not the self-awareness. Apito, thanks to her training with Hinata, had acquired an intuition that could almost predict the future. The difference in ability between Apito and Dino was obvious, but Apito was still an opponent to be reckoned with. Beretta acted as a shield, and Apito attacked from behind. Beretta would also occasionally join in the attack, so the two of them could reach Dino. And Beretta's magic was even more troublesome. Dino was immune to most spells, but Beretta's magic was predominantly the support type. In other words, Beretta's magic was not used to attack Dino directly, but to strengthen his own physical values. Weakening Dino's magic was ineffective, but there was no way to interfere with spells that increased the speed, strength, or durability of Beretta or Apito. In that case, all he had to do was to interfere with the activation of the spell, but Beretta, being a demon who was good at magic, could unleash magic without even thinking about it. Moreover, Beretta was immune to the unique skill Sloth's Fall in Hypno. Because of this, Dino had been struggling. But now, that was finally over. The long-awaited feeling had finally accumulated and it was time to fight back. Shut up. Two people teaming up to bully a weak man like me, and yet you talk so high and mighty. It's only because I'm patient that I've been able to keep you guys company. You should be grateful. Take this and get some rest. By the time he had finished saying this, the Fall in Hypno had been activated. As was typical of Dino, there was no concept of fairness in his dictionary. Phew, is it finally over? Seeing Apito fall to her knees, Dino was convinced of his victory. His eyes turned their attention to Beretta, only to be met with an incoming fist that he scrambled to avoid. Whoa, you resisted my sleep. Of course I did. It was a mistake to get caught even once, so how could I get caught twice? It was because the demon race was resistant to abnormalities that Beretta was able to devise a countermeasure. With his unique skill Double Crosser, he was able to reverse the drowsiness. Seriously? Well, it's too bad for Apito, but I'll just let her die and come back to life. Beretta remained calm in front of Dino. Dino was more impressed than dismayed by the way he was so obediently following the logic of victory. I can't believe he's managed to keep things this even until now with me as an opponent. It's not because of me, but because Beretta and the others are so good. In that case, I'll have to use that. Dino had a secret move. He didn't want to use it because it would bring back terrible memories, but now there was no other choice. I'll admit it. You should be proud of yourself for making me take you this seriously. As soon as Dino shouted this, he unleashed the power that he had sealed away. Ultimate skill Heavenly King as Tarta. The ultimate skill given to him from Velgrynd. Confirmed. The evolution of the unique skill Sloth through the creation of the ultimate skill Heavenly King as Tarta. Successful. Dino's sloth had a special nature. The lazier he usually was, the more powerful his strength would increase. To put it simply, it was possible to accumulate energy. Dino took advantage of this and evolved the unique skill Sloth into the ultimate skill Sloth King, Belfagor. That was Dino's secret move, the creative evolution of the ultimate skill Heavenly King as Tarta. If one uses the power of the ultimate skill Heavenly King as Tarta, they can achieve their desired evolution, though it is limited to their own skill. Of course, that wasn't everything, but Dino wanted to preserve his ultimate skill Heavenly King as Tarta. This was because the labyrinth was under constant surveillance and things were constantly being recorded. Dino, as a watcher, was reluctant to expose everything about himself. Also, that Rimuru guy is terrifyingly intelligent with an abundance of resources. Even when he took out Clayman, he brought out recorded footage as evidence. If my power is exposed, then he'll easily be able to take countermeasures. Demon Lord Rimuru was not an opponent to be underestimated. When it came to him, Dino knew that there was no such thing as too much caution. That is why Dino created the Sloth King Belphegor as a power he could show. Now, that power was targeting Beretta. Now sleep. Fallen catastrophe. The laws were rewritten, and the positive factors began to regress to the negative factors. This temptation, regardless of whether the person was alive or dead, lead them from a state of activity to a state of cessation. However, there was no compulsive force to this, and the target of the attack would voluntarily walk the path to destruction. This could be considered a type of hypnotism, except that the effect reached different dimensions. One would not be able to awaken from the slumber of the evolved Sloth King Belphegor. It destroyed not only the mind, but also the body. In this case, however, the guided destination was destruction, but it was also possible to lower the level and limit it to abnormalities such as sleep. It was a very versatile skill. Because this power did not use sound as a medium to transmit the interference waves, it could not be prevented by physical barriers or the like. It was worth mentioning that there were very few means of defense. Absolute domination over those who possessed wisdom and feelings, that was the power of the Sloth King Belphegor. Truly the terrifying ultimate evolution of one of the 7 deadly sins series, sloth. Dino was impressed by it. He tried to destroy Beretta carefully so that he would not be able to move for a while. That is why destruction had been chosen, but now it proved to be more powerful than expected. Beretta had vanished into the dust, and it would take some time for him to recover. The bracelet had also disappeared with him, but Dino didn't care, thinking that Ramrus's power would be able to handle it. Furthermore, if he had gone easy on Beretta, he would have failed in his mission. Don't blame me if you died, Dino thought irresponsibly. But hey, even Beretta is only a mid-tier player amongst all Demon Lord Rimuru's subordinates. It was only natural that Dino felt like complaining. Even an opponent as troublesome as Beretta was still only a lower-ranking existence who had yet to acquire an ultimate skill. Moreover, he wasn't even the Demon Lord himself, but merely a subordinate. Dino thought while shuddering at the fact. If the upper-ranking members of the labyrinth had remained, would he even have been able to win by himself? Annoyed, Dino turned his attention to Ramrus. He saw that Ramrus was sleeping and touched her body. He should have been able to touch her. Ramrus turned into a particle of light. Then, taking the form of a butterfly, began to fly around Dino. It seemed to be mocking him. Hey, no way. Am I hallucinating? He didn't want to believe it, couldn't believe it. But there was no other way to explain the situation. Sure enough, this battle was being monitored. I'm glad that I was cautious, but still. One of his trump cards was also exposed to the enemy. And his next opponent would surely be far more dangerous. Clack, 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 the sound of someone's footsteps could be heard. The beautiful butterfly of light fluttered like a dance to the man who approached slowly, stopping at his arm. The butterfly turned back into a particle of light and then changed its form again into the innocent, sleeping Ramrus who had a blissful expression on her face, seemingly unaware of anything around her. Beretta, who had somehow been resurrected, reverently received Ramrus, who had made his forearm her bed. Beretta Dono, please take care of Ramrus-sama. The man spoke quietly. Yes, leave it to me. Do you need support? No need. I alone am enough. From the very beginning, Ramrus's escort had been foolproof. Deep in the safest part of the labyrinth, many heavy traps were laid out. All according to a certain someone's instructions, orders were sent out to the battle forces to fight in small gradual bursts in order to expose the abilities of the encroaching enemy. And above all, this labyrinth had the strongest of guardians. Before leaving the labyrinth, Veldora had entrusted the protection of Ramrus to his trusty disciple and confidant. Ramrus was the only one who did not know about it. And now, that person was on the move. The man standing before Dino was the Mist Lord Zegion, the absolute powerhouse of this labyrinth. Zegion had cocooned himself for the sake of his evolution, but his consciousness had always been kept awake. In response to Veldora's request, he grasped the situation in the labyrinth perfectly. With the overwhelming blessing of absolute defense, he was able to ensure Ramrus's safety. Dino recognized this as well. Seriously, you've got to be joking. Those were Dino's honest feelings. Just when he thought he had finally beaten the enemy, a new one suddenly appeared, all the while with the purpose of exposing his own hand. I knew it. That Rimuru is such a cunning bastard, of course he would prefer this kind of tactic. At this point, the operation has failed. Forget about capturing Ramrus, Dino's own escape had now become a difficult problem. Besides that, when did he even evacuate Ramrus in the first place? I was in this room the whole time, and even saw Ramrus talking. She turned into a butterfly, so she should have been long gone by then, right? If that wasn't the case, then that meant Zegion had let Ramrus escape in a way that even Dino couldn't see. But if that's true, then I've been talking to an illusion this whole time. If so, then that was also a big problem. It was an unusual state of affairs. Dino is an ultimate skill holder and is also well versed in hypnosis. Even so, it seemed Zegion had left Dino in a state of hallucination which should have normally been impossible. However, the possibility could not be dismissed in its entirety. If Zegion also possessed an ultimate skill and was proficient in mental attacks, then there was still the possibility that he could use illusions that were enough to fool even Dino. Dino also knew how powerful Zegion was. He was a powerful humanoid of the Insecta race and was also of the Demon Lord seed. He was favored by the Demon Lord Rimuru and had acquired extraordinary fighting abilities. It was heard that Zegion had taken Veldora as his teacher and that his fighting skills were even superior to those of the Primordials. That was Zegion, the one regarded as the absolute king of the labyrinth. When the Imperial army had invaded the labyrinth, Zegion had eliminated the intruders with an overwhelming power. At that time, Dino had taken the opportunity to observe the fight and concluded that Zegion was invincible in physical combat. However, the most important point here was that he had only been fighting physically. He hadn't used any mental or spiritual attacks, let alone an ultimate skill. He hadn't even seemed to use a unique skill. No. Is his distortion field skill alone strong enough to reach the ultimate level? Still, it was a physical ability, and Dino, who was good at mental attacks, thought that it was still manageable. At this point, the only thing that came to his mind was the celebration from the other day. On that day, Demon Lord Rimuru had granted Zegion some kind of power. Under the guise of a celebratory reward, he had initiated an evolutionary ritual that awakened his subordinates who had distinguished themselves in battle. In fact, some of them, such as Gabble and others, had greatly increased their power and had entered the slumber of evolution. It was a phenomenon very similar to the Harvest Festival for Demon Lords, and it was also no wonder that Zegion had acquired new skills. But isn't that still strange? How is it that even his subordinates can evolve into the same realm as the Lord Rimuru? I can understand if the subordinates of an awakened Demon Lord are at the level of Demon Lord seed, but even his subordinates are at the level of an awakened Demon Lord. That's too much of a foul. This was a phenomenon that even Dino, who had lived for a very long time, could not have predicted. Even Guy could not have done such a thing. No, once it's all said and done, this is unending. In the first place, the fact that he uses the Primordials as mere subordinates is insane. With a guy like that, no matter what he does, it shouldn't even be a surprise anymore. Dino was inwardly cursing at Rimuru. As the strongest of all demons, they could have easily stopped Dino in his tracks. The superiority and inferiority of existence values could not be a reliable factor with a primordial as an opponent. For Rimuru to take such existences as his minions was completely abnormal in Dino's eyes. Dino had thought it best to stay uninvolved as much as possible. And yet, the Zegion in front of him was comparable to those primordials. He was clearly foreign. More than just becoming a million class, his domineering aura gave the impression of endless power. A power that transcended numbers. It was an aura that only those with the ultimate power could emit. It also implied that Zegion, like Dino, had acquired an ultimate skill. This is why I hate working. Dino lamented having drawn the short end of the stick. Exhaling a sigh of resignation, he tried to look for the best solution forward, but good ideas were not easy to come by, and time waits for no one. That's all for today. Hope you guys enjoy this video. Please check my other YouTube videos. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe and hit the notification icon, and don't miss any updates.